Everyone in the building knew her before they ever knew her name. She was the woman who never smiled, the woman whose heels echoed like warnings down marble corridors, the woman assistants whispered about and helpers feared. One by one, she fired them all: drivers, nannies, secretaries, housekeepers, sometimes within hours, sometimes within days, always without explanation. Not good enough, she'd say flatly, her eyes cold, distant, carrying the weight of a life that had taught her never to rely on anyone. Her name was Evelyn Cross, CEO of Crosswell Holdings, a self-made empire built from nothing but ambition and scars. She believed kindness was weakness, help was temporary, and attachment was dangerous. People called her heartless. What no one knew was that she had learned that cruelty from the world itself. On a rainy Tuesday morning, when the city felt heavier than usual, Evelyn stepped out of her car and nearly collided with a man crouched near the building entrance, struggling with a broken stroller wheel. A small boy stood beside him, holding a lunchbox decorated with faded cartoon stickers. The man looked exhausted, his jacket worn, his hands rough, but his voice, when he spoke to the child, was gentle, steady. "It's okay, buddy. We'll fix it. We always do." Evelyn rolled her eyes, irritated by the delay, already preparing the sharp words she was known for. But before she could speak, the boy slipped on the wet pavement. The man reacted instantly, dropping everything to shield him, taking the fall himself. The child didn't cry. He just hugged his father's neck and whispered, "I'm okay, Papa." Something in that moment, something Evelyn hadn't felt in years, tightened in her chest. Security rushed over, ready to push the man aside, but Evelyn raised a hand. "Wait." Her voice surprised even herself. The man looked up, finally meeting her eyes. There was no fear there. Just tired dignity. "I'm sorry if we're in the way," he said. "I'll move him." Evelyn noticed how he spoke to her the same way he spoke to his son, calm, respectful, without begging. "What happened to the stroller?" she asked. He explained quietly. "Single dad. Wife passed 3 years ago. Couldn't afford a new one yet. He worked 2 jobs. One as a night cleaner in the same building." Evelyn frowned. She owned the building. She'd fired 3 cleaners last month alone. Yet here he stood, still working, still standing, still gentle. Later that day, during a board meeting where executives trembled under her gaze, Evelyn found her thoughts drifting back to the man and his son. She dismissed the meeting early, something she'd never done before, and walked down to the lower floors. There he was, mopping the hallway, humming softly while the boy sat nearby doing homework on the floor. "Why is he here?" Evelyn snapped. "Sir, this isn't allowed." The man stood up immediately. "I'm sorry. I had no sitter today. I didn't want to miss work." Evelyn felt the familiar urge to fire him, to remove the inconvenience, to restore control. Her lips parted. The words were right there. But the boy looked up and smiled at her. "Hi," he said cheerfully. "My dad works very hard." Something broke. Something small, but irreversible. She didn't fire him. Days passed. Then weeks. Evelyn watched him quietly, how he never complained, never arrived late, never asked for favors. When others were dismissed for minor errors, he stayed. One afternoon, a senior executive spilled coffee on Evelyn's documents. She fired him on the spot. The room went silent. Helpers exchanged terrified glances. Later that same day, the single dad returned a folder she'd dropped earlier. "You forgot this," he said simply. "No fear. No flattery. Just honesty." Evelyn stared at him, searching for ulterior motives. There were none. At the company's annual gala, an event filled with glittering elites, Evelyn arrived alone as always. Halfway through the night, chaos erupted when a catering staff member quit mid-shift, followed by another. Whispers spread. She fired them. Again. Suddenly, a small figure appeared near the stage. The single dad's son, wearing a slightly oversized suit, helping his father carry trays to fill the gap. The room watched in disbelief as the man quietly stepped up, helping without being asked, saving the event from embarrassment. When Evelyn noticed, she walked straight toward him. Gasps followed. People braced for another public firing. Instead, in front of everyone, she leaned down and kissed him gently on the cheek. The room froze. "You're the only helper," she said softly, her voice trembling for the first time, "who never tried to take anything from me." The silence shattered into whispers. Cameras flashed. The single dad stood stunned, his son beaming. Evelyn straightened, turned to the crowd, and said something no one expected: "Sometimes, the strongest people are the ones who stay kind even when life is cruel." And if this moment moved something inside you, if you believe stories like this deserve to be told, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, because what happened next changed everything forever. The next morning, the video was everywhere. Cold CEO shows emotion. Billionaire kisses janitor. Who is the single dad? Evelyn Cross woke up to headlines she'd never prepared for. For the first time in her life, control had slipped through her fingers, and instead of anger, she felt relief. At the office, employees stood straighter, quieter, unsure how to approach her now. The single dad avoided her gaze, worried he'd crossed an invisible line. "I'm sorry if I embarrassed you," he said when she finally called him into her office. She looked at him for a long moment, then shook her head. "No," she replied. "You reminded me of who I used to be." She told him everything. The childhood in foster homes. The helpers who stole from her first business. The betrayal that taught her to fire before being hurt. He listened without interrupting. When she finished, he said gently, "Pain doesn't mean everyone after it deserves punishment." No one had ever spoken to her like that. And she didn't fire him for it. Instead, she did something unprecedented. She offered him a full-time position, not as a cleaner, but as a facilities supervisor, with flexible hours and childcare support. He hesitated. "I don't want special treatment." Evelyn smiled faintly. "It's not special. It's fair." The change rippled through the company. Firings slowed. Listening replaced shouting. Trust, once forbidden, began to grow, but not everyone was happy. Board members questioned her leadership. Investors threatened withdrawal. "You're getting soft," they warned. Evelyn stood firm. "I'm getting human." When pressure mounted, it was the single dad who stood by her side, reminding her daily that strength didn't have to mean loneliness. One evening, after a brutal confrontation with the board, Evelyn found the boy asleep on her office couch, wrapped in her expensive coat. She sat beside him, tears finally falling freely. Months later, Crosswell Holdings became known not just for profit, but for loyalty. Turnover dropped. Productivity rose. And Evelyn? She smiled now. Not often. But genuinely. At the next gala, she didn't arrive alone. She arrived with the single dad and his son, hand in hand. When asked by reporters why she trusted him when she fired everyone else, she answered simply, "Because he never stopped being kind when the world gave him every reason not to be." And that kiss on the cheek? It wasn't romance. It was respect. Gratitude. Redemption. The world expected a fairy tale ending after the kiss, the promotion, the headlines, but real change never comes quietly. It arrives with resistance, with testing moments, with storms that ask whether transformation is real or just a performance. And for Evelyn Cross, the storm came faster than she imagined. Within weeks, Crosswell Holdings faced its first real internal rebellion. Senior managers who had thrived under fear felt exposed under empathy. Anonymous complaints surfaced. Rumors spread that the CEO had lost her edge, that emotions were clouding her judgment. One evening, as the city lights flickered below her office window, Evelyn received an email from the board: emergency vote. Leadership review. She closed her laptop slowly, breathing in the silence. Old Evelyn would have prepared for war. New Evelyn picked up her phone and called the one person who had never pretended around her, the single dad, Daniel. Daniel arrived late that night, still in his work jacket, worry etched across his face. "You don't owe me anything," he said, standing awkwardly by her desk. Evelyn shook her head. "I don't know how to do this alone anymore." Those words were harder for her than any boardroom battle. Daniel didn't give advice like an executive. He didn't promise victory. He simply said, "Then don't be alone. Let them see the truth." And for the first time in her career, Evelyn listened, not because she had to, but because she trusted. The board meeting was brutal. Accusations flew. Charts were slammed onto the table. "You fired fewer people this quarter. You hired someone unqualified. You publicly embarrassed the brand." Evelyn stood, hands steady, voice calm. "Yes," she said. "And profits are up. Retention is up. Morale is up. The only thing down is fear." Silence followed. Then something unexpected happened. A junior board member spoke up. Then another. One by one, people who had been silent for years found their voices. The vote passed. Evelyn remained CEO. When she walked out of that room, Daniel was waiting outside with his son, who held up a hand-drawn sign that read, "Good job, boss lady." Evelyn laughed, really laughed. For the first time since childhood, life didn't turn perfect overnight, but it turned real. Evelyn began mentoring interns personally. Daniel enrolled in night classes, encouraged by a scholarship Evelyn quietly arranged, but never announced. The boy, Noah, started calling the office home number 2. And the kiss that once shocked the world became a symbol inside the company, not gossip, but hope. A reminder that respect can exist without romance, kindness without weakness, power without cruelty. On the anniversary of Crosswell Holdings, Evelyn took the stage again. This time, she didn't talk about profits. She talked about people. About trust. About the single dad who never asked for anything and gave everything anyway. "If you're watching this," she said, looking into the camera streaming live across the world, "and you think kindness doesn't matter anymore, stay with us. Subscribe. Share these stories. Because the world doesn't change through power alone. It changes when ordinary people choose to stay human." The applause wasn't loud. It was lasting, and somewhere in the crowd, a single dad held his son's hand, knowing that sometimes the smallest acts, showing up, staying kind, refusing to harden, can rewrite even the coldest hearts.